Namaha. Jai, Tulsi Maharani ki jai. We offer our most respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees and fulfill the desires of everyone, and they're full of compassion for the fallen and evil souls. Kripa Sindhu Nyangata Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihati Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihati Gopi Jana Malaba Girivardhari Gopi Jana Malaba Girivardhari Yasodanandana Prajajanananda Yasodanandana Prajajanananda Yamuna Tera Vanachare Yamuna Tera Vanachare Jaya Ranu Madhava Kunya Vihagate Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihagate Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasunanandana Brajajananandahuna Ranjana Jamuna te Ravana Chagutri Yamuna te Ravana Chagutri Jayo Randhu Madhuva Kunya Vihare Jayo Randhu Madhuva Kunya Vihare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahangsa Paravidacharya Osutela Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Chatanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopikavanath Swam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagadasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shilabhopad Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Guru Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Bhavani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pachari Navishesa Nirvani Paschatati Shatarni. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 22nd Chapter, Text 23. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Paradaya Swa Vasangsi Prishta Sangama Sanjataha Grahita Chita no Chelos Tasmen Lajayate Kshanaha Paradaya Swavasamsi Parishta Sangama Sajitaha Grahita Chitta no Chelus Thosmin Lajaya Tekshanaha Ridhvaya Svavasamsi Prishta Sangama Sajitaha Grahita Chitta no Chelus Tasmin Lajaya Tekshanaha Ridhaya Svavasamsi Prishta Sangama Sajitaha Grahita Chitta no Chelus Tasmin Lajaya Tekshanaha. Okay. Parithoya, putting on. Swavasangsi, their own garments. Prishta, of their beloved. Sangama, by this association. Sajjitaha, becoming completely attached to him. Rahita, taken away. Chittaha, whose minds. Na, could not. U, indeed. Chilahu, move. Tasman, upon him. Lajayata, full of shyness. Ikshanaha, whose glances. Translation: the gopis were addicted to associating with their beloved Krishna, and thus they became captivated by him. Thus, even after putting their clothes on, they did not move. They simply remained where they were, shyly glancing at him. So, we can repeat, the gopis were addicted to associating with their beloved Krishna, and thus they became captivated by him. Thus, even after putting their clothes on, they did not move. They simply remained where they were, shyly glancing at him. So, purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. By association with their beloved Krishna, the gopis had become more attached to him than ever. Just as Krishna had stolen their clothes, he had also stolen their minds and their love. The gopis interpreted the whole incident as proof that Krishna was also attached to them. Otherwise, why would he have gone to the trouble of playing with them in this way? Because they thought that Krishna was now attached to them, they glanced at him with shyness, and being stunned by the rising of their ecstatic love, they could not move from where they stood. Krishna had overcome their shyness and forced them to come out of the water naked, but now, having dressed properly, they again became shy in his presence. In fact, this incident increased their humbleness before Krishna. They did not want Krishna to see them staring at him, but they cautiously took the opportunity to glance at the Lord. And we'll read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Just as Krishna had stolen the clothes of the gopi, he whose heart was stolen by them also stole their hearts. This verse describes them as the reservoir of prema. Just as Krishna understood they were extremely attached to him, they also understood that Krishna was attracted to them by the mercy of Kachiyani. Extending bashful glances, they could not return home because of their stunned state arising from prema. The bashfulness of which they tried to hide, but which was revealed by Krishna, and was banished from their bodies, again returned in their eyes. By the assistance of this modesty, the gopis then approached near to Krishna and attained his extreme mercy. There is the suggestion that the bashfulness pervaded their bodies more than even previously. And let's see if I'll read Jiva Goswami's commentary. Jiva Goswami's commentary: distributed their clothing, they recognized their own garments, and each put on their own garments. They were controlled by his association, or they were attracted to his association, and they attracted him. Grahita Chita. By the mutual feelings between them and by the mercy of his consoling words, with shy glances they did not move, remaining fixed at that place in front of him. The locative case, tasmin, can stand for the ablative case. They did not move away from him, or after they dressed and their shyness had decreased, their love for him arose. Grita Chitaha. In private they remained as if they prepared for marriage. Preshta Sangama Sanjitaha. Glancing at him shyly, they did not move. They displayed the Anubhava called Vikriti. So Anubhava. So then, Rimanesha Dibir Yatrano Shate Swa Vivakshatam Vijayate Chistayai Vedam Vikritam Tad Vidur Buddha. When one does not utter what one wants to say because of shyness, pride, or anger, and hints at this by actions only, it is called Vikritam by the wise. This is from the Ujjala Nilamani 11-11.58. So, Dayasvasamsi Preshta Swangamasajitaha Grahita Chitta no Chelus Tasmin Lajayate Kshanaha. So Om Gana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So it's very interesting how the gopis responded to Krishna, because under ordinary circumstances, had these been ordinary girls and Krishna been an ordinary boy, the girls would have been extremely angry because they were understanding several things, that the boy was trying to exploit them. You know, first of all, see them naked. Second of all, just play with them, you know, just manipulate them. Nobody likes to get manipulated. We have a need for autonomy. You know, if someone is just controlling us like that, even if someone was married and one's husband did that, I mean, if your husband did something like it, would you get upset with him? Heavy hit, he'd be finished. Be divorce time. So why is this? Well, the reason is that Krishna doesn't really have the desire to control you. That's why he's given us his free will. And Krishna has no lust. That's why people love Krishna, because he doesn't have any lust. He's not trying to exploit anyone. Why doesn't he have any lust? Well, first of all, he's Atmaram. He's self-satisfied. Doesn't need whatever anyone else has. You know, he doesn't need to manipulate someone to feel like the boss. Like, you know, men, like, generally, they like to control things. There's this whole controlling thing that men have. And they like to feel like they're in charge. You know, ladies too, sorry. They control in different ways. So, and it makes them feel, you know, their sense of identity, self-worth, and all that other nice stuff. So Krishna has his self-worth because, you know, he's everything. Aham sarvasya prabho matak sarvam pravarti. Everything comes from him, you know. You can't have a bigger ego than Krishna. And he doesn't need anyone to assuage his ego. So anyway, so Krishna is Atmaram. He's self-satisfied. He's Aptakam, and therefore he's Swarat. That means Atmaram means to take pleasure in the self. Doesn't need anything else, because everything is his, and he is everything. And then Aptakam, whatever he wants, he gets, because he has all his energies serving him. He doesn't have to ask or even think about it. His energies are first-class servants, as we've described many times before, that a first-class servant does what the master wants, even without being asked. The second class does what the master wants, being asked, but they're very happy. Yeah, thank you, maestro. Master, whatever you may call, Prabhu, Swami, whatever. And third class does what the master asks, but is really like grumbling about it. You know, why do you ask me to do that? I'm going to do it because I have to do it. If I don't do it, it's a mad elephant offense. And 10th class doesn't do it. So Krishna's energies are all first-class servants. And we've talked about this many times before. That's not the topic of today's class. So Krishna has no lust. So the devotees understand that Krishna is simply doing it out of love. And if someone has no lust, then there's no problem. I mean, let's give another example of someone who didn't have any lust. That was Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami was running away from his father, actually. Because anyway, some people here who are listening to me, parents want them to get married. So he was running away from his father at the age of 16. And it's described only the trees and the mountains would echo his father's plaintive cry. And as he was running away from his father, because he didn't have time to put his clothes on, when sounds like Kumbhakarna downstairs. So as he was running, I'm sensitive to sounds, but as he was running away from his father, he didn't have time to put his clothes on, so he's running by these girls who were bathing naked in the lake. And the girls thought nothing of it, because there's no lust like that. And also, he was, anyway, and he didn't have any clothes on. The girls had covered themselves. But his father, of course, Vyasadeva didn't have any lust either, but he was acting in such a way to discriminate between men and women. He was a householder. He had children. Shukadeva Goswami was one of his children. And actually, he was the father of the whole Kuru dynasty, too. I mean, that's the whole Mahabharata story is like Vyasadeva's kids. Isn't it? Pandu, Dhritarashtra, Vidura. So anyway, so he was running after his son, and when the girls saw him, they went, ooh! And they covered themselves. So it's really interesting that if you have someone who doesn't have any lust, and we're talking either men or women, then people feel very much at ease dealing with that person and actually respect that person. And I remember Prabhupada was talking about that. He asked the devotees one time, he says, why do you think everyone is worshiping me and respecting me? And he said, because I don't have any lust. So, what is lust? And I wanted, of course, this is not one of your Rasika classes. I'm sorry about that. I'm not that elevated. So we're going to talk about lust in this class. So what is lust? And I actually want to make reference to Bhagavad Gita. Of course, lust is sort of stimulated when you contemplate sense objects. That's the first thing. The second chapter of the Gita teaches us what Jayata Vishak Sangoste Shupajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Krota Vijayate. So that lust is stimulated by contemplating different things. But really, someone is transcendental, they don't even have that lust, so it's not even their problem. I mean, they can contemplate money for Krishna, Dhanam, was it Dhanam, Janam, Sundarim, like we're chanting every morning. A devotee says, I don't want any money. And so you see someone like Prabhupada, he's saying, well, give me the money. Bring the followers out. That Prabhupada was not interested. It wasn't because of lust that Prabhupada wanted disciples. It was because of love to save the world. Prabhupada, like he was in Australia, and he gave people first and second initiation, when the first time they came to the temple, basically, and put the deity, could you imagine that? I wouldn't even try that. We give everybody a pure devotee test before we give them initiation. Stick them with pins or something. Anyway, so, but, Prabhupada initiated people because he wanted them to take care of the deity, Gopinath. And he said, I'm leaving Krishna, I'm leaving you in the hands of the Malechas. People just walked in the temple one day, and he initiated them. Can you imagine that? I've never done that. And actually, that's why we have a movement. So it means that Prabhupada had no desire to control, no janam, no desire for followers, and of course, and then Prabhupada was dealing with so many girls, young girls too. He was teaching them how to dress in their saris, because they didn't know. There were no Indian girls or ladies around at that time, so Prabhupada had to just somehow or other. I mean, I guess Prabhupada knew it because he watched his mother. Prabhupada said that's how he learned how to cook, too, because he watched his mother cooking, so he became a first-class rasika. Rasika means a cook, a good cook, one who's actually good with the rasa. So where does it, let's get back to our friend lust. So even if a pure devotee is in touch with sense objects, he doesn't get disturbed by these things. Or let me give you another example of this, of course, which is actually even more striking. It's the example of Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy, okay, here's the story of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There was this one devotee, Pradyumna Mishra. he wanted to hear from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the same topics that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy discussed on the banks of the Godavari River. Godavari River is a very beautiful place. I've been there, and we have a beautiful ISKCON temple there. So anyway, and I went to the place where they actually discussed. Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy had this, what's called a Ramananda Samvada, the discussion with Ramananda. And so Pradyumna Mishra said, I want to hear. And Lord Chaitanya said, you go hear from Ramananda Roy. So he went to hear from Ramananda Roy, and Ramananda Roy wasn't there, but he was informed by Ramananda Roy's servant that Ramananda Roy was teaching the Devidasis, or Devadasis, sorry, that's the Devadasis. The Devadasis, how to dance. Just like you see, Champaka in the morning dancing for the deities. I didn't teach her how to dance. I didn't teach her how to dress. I mean, that would have been highly inappropriate. Can you imagine, that I would show Champaka all the mudras and decorate, put her decorations and the whatever they put on the toes, Come on. But he was doing that with all these young girls. They were like 18 years old, 19, 20, Devadasis. And he was doing that. And, even just to try bathing and decorating their bodies and everything like that. Oh, my God. And so when Pradyumna Mishra heard that, he got a little confused, I'm supposed to hear about transcendental subject matters from someone who's doing these things? And so what happened is that he went back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him, have you heard about these subject matters? And Pradyumna Mishra said, no, but he described what was happening. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, basically, he said, I'm a sannyasi, even if I see the wooden form of a lady, changes in the body and mind. And so he says, but Ramananda Roy, he has this prerogative because he's fully identifying himself as, in his transcendental body, as actually he's Vishaka, but Lord Chaitanya didn't say that at that time, as a gopi assistant to Radharani. Wow! That's pretty cool. Sorry about that expression. However, that doesn't work for most of us. So we have to be careful about these things. And then, of course, Pradyumna Mishra went back to Ramananda Roy. He heard about all of the topics, and he became amazed, overwhelmed by hearing all these different topics. And then he went back to Lord Chaitanya and said, this is an ocean of nectar. So, but here's something that we have to think about. First of all, is the Jayato Vishat Pum Samsung Gastesha Pajayate. Don't. Be careful with sense objects. Be really careful, because when you contemplate, you get attached. Attachment comes lust. Lust comes anger. And don't think you can conquer lust with anger. Sorry, today's class is not very rasika, so don't think you can conquer lust with anger. Lord Shiva tried that. Lord Shiva was approached. There was Cupid there who was trying to disturb Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is very dear. And Lord Shiva did not succumb to lust at that point. Of course, Lord Shiva, this is a transcendental story. It's not meant as a criticism of Lord Shiva. But the way he dealt with it was that he burnt up Cupid. So that's a perfect illustration of, Jayata Vishayapum Sam Sangaste Bajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kama Krota Bijayate. And of course, Krota Bhavati Samoha, you get really Samoha, completely bewildered when you get angry. I mean, anger is not bad completely. It can be used in Krishna's service. Like we get angry at people who are blaspheming or something like that, or I get angry at the contractors. Yes, believe it or not, it's happened. I am angry. So anyways, anger can be used in Krishna's service. But it's just bewildered, and then one falls down in the material whirlpool and is lost because of that. So as far as we are concerned, there's some nice verses in the Bhagavad Gita. And actually this, in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, beginning with text 36, there's a whole bunch of verses that deal with this lust and, how the symptoms of it, and then also how to conquer it. So I thought it would be appropriate to read just the English right now, and then some other things about conquering lust. Because we're not on the level of Ramananda Roy, Srila Prabhupada, and not even on of course, I'm not on the level of Lord Shiva. So we have to hear about lust. So then, once we hear about lust and can conquer it, then we can actually understand what real love is. And that's why it says in the Upadeshamrita that to be qualified to be a guru, one has to be able to tolerate these pushings and pullings. And more than tolerate, actually we'll get to the end, when we get to the end of these verses, I'll talk about that. So Vacho Vegam, Manasakrota Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Pashta Vegam. And we're not only talking about lust in terms of, men, women things, or nowadays men, women, whatever. We're talking about lust in terms of, vacho, vega, the desire to, to enjoy the tongue, basically. I remember I was in Venezuela one time. You can't be too crazy about this. And there was one sannyasi who said, you shouldn't eat mangoes. I said, why not? He says, because it's like having sex with your tongue. Anyway, that's crazy. He's no longer a sannyasi. Actually killed himself. So, but you don't want to be pushed around by the tongue. That's the point. So, he thought it was against the regulative principles to eat mangoes. For a sannyasi. Of course, a sannyasi is advised by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, don't wear fine clothing. I'm following that one pretty well. Don't think of women, even dreams. I don't do that. And don't, don't eat opulent foodstuffs. I do that, see? And think of Radha and Krishna in your hearts. That I don't do that one yet. So anyway, that's Lord Chaitanya's instruction to actually Raghunath Das Goswami, like that. So anyway, so let's read from the Gita, because I don't have much time in class. Because Arjuna is asking Krishna basically a question that brings up this whole topic of lust. Arjuna asks, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Because that's what lust does to you. It makes you do things like, people imitate Krishna, and, whether, people, I guess they don't steal clothes like Krishna did, but they attack women or seduce women and try to enjoy someone as an object rather than a subject. Krishna treats everyone like a subject, not an object. Try to understand that. There's a difference. Whereas if we're succumbing to lust, the desire to exploit matter and to exploit other people, we're treating other people as objects rather than subjects. I hope you understand the distinction. So here, Krishna answers the question. I like the Bhagavad Gita. I guess I'm not that advanced. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion. That means the desire to enjoy something. That's what passion means. Passion means you're looking to possess something. It's envy. Because you have something that I want. And I don't consider how you feel about it, but I want something that you have, whether it's your body or whether it's your computer or your car, whatever. Born in contact with the material mode of passion. And here again, Krishna says, later transformed into wrath, which is what he talked about in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And he says, This is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Now, that's a pretty intense statement, isn't it? Absolute statement. All-devouring. I mean, what does all-devouring mean? I mean, just like devour, like if you say to someone when they're eating, you just devoured your prashadam. What does it mean? It means that basically you just swallowed it. You didn't even chew it. Right? Isn't that what devour means? So, so it's just like swallowing this whole world. And it's the sinful enemy. It's all pervasive. Excuse me. It's all pervasive, and it's the enemy of everybody and the enemy of the world. And because of lust, people are hurting each other, starting wars. They may put a facade of religiosity on the lust, but actually that's what it is. We talk about the Moguls attacking India. It's a facade of religiosity, but it's lust. You have Aurangzeb. He was actually supposed to be a very religious, actually went to the mosque every day, or many times a day. But just lust. And that's really what's causing the problems in the world. And then the next verse, it shows us the different degrees of the lust. Fire covered by smoke, mirror covered by dust, or the embryo covered by the womb. The living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. In other words, talking about the motive of goodness, passion, or ignorance. And then the famous verse, which I quote quite often. Thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. And the next verse teaches us where the lust resides. It's not just one place. Senses, mind, and intelligence. You have senses. So in other words, in the gross body and the subtle body. And that's pretty intense, isn't it? I mean, it'd be one thing if just the gross body, you just take some Novocaine or something like that. Or you just get old. Like, there was a king who asked the sage, how long does this lust remain? And the sage said, well, it never goes away, kingy. And the king said, I don't believe it. So the sage says, come with me, bring your daughter with me. We're going to visit the hospital. Someone has COVID. So, so this guy dying from COVID, I'm just making that up, that aspect up. He's dying in the hospital, he's like 89 years old, just shaking from Parkinson's disease or something like that. And the king walks in with the sage, well-known sage, transcendentalist, a sage that could bless you to go back to home, back to Godhead. So he walks in with the sage, and what does the guy do? Just like, woo! This old booger, this old guy, he just looks at this girl. So it's not just the gross body. It's not you get older, you get older, phew. I mean, things are more peaceful when you get older. Your get up and go, went up and went. So, but still, there's lust to enjoy, which is not just the sexual desire. It's just the lust to exploit, to see people as objects. It never goes away until you do something else. So the senses, mind, and intelligence, sitting place, through them the lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. And of course, Krishna here in the next verse, we're just going to read 2 more verses. Krishna says, in the beginning, Arjun, you should curb this great symbol of sin. Again, symbol of sin. It's interesting. Yeah, because actually in Sanskrit it says that. Papmanam means of all sins. It's like a papmanam. That's sin. Prajahi, curb it by regulating the senses. In other words, in the beginning, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Kroda Vegam, Jira Vegam, Udurpashta Vegam, and then the next verse, Krishna states that you use your intelligence
to do that, because he says the working sense is superior to dull matter, mind is higher than senses, intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So in other words, Krishna indicates, let me read the last verse because that's important. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental, material senses, mind, intelligence, almighty arm, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So really important. But above and beyond, the regulation of the senses and all that other stuff, we want to get rid of it, not simply tolerate it. And so how do we get rid of it? We want to become Atmarama, self-satisfied. Of course, we can never become Aptakama or Swarat like Krishna. But we can become Atmarama. And I'm going to cite two verses that will help us understand how to become Atmarama. And this is a beautiful verse from the second canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, I actually memorized this verse, but I just want to read it to make sure I get all the words. Pravishta karna randrena swanam bhavasuro ruham dunoti shamalam krishnam salilashyata sharat. The sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, that is the Srimad Bhagavatam, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee and sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship and thus cleanses the dust. This is a beautiful verse of material associations such as lust, anger, and hankering. So this is what we're talking about. Thus it acts like the autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. In other words, by rendering service by the first process of devotional service, hearing. And as we chant every morning, of course, Cheto Darpanam Arjanam Bhava Mahadvagni Nirvapanam, right? Cleansing the mirror of the mind. And so then by doing that, here's another verse, and I don't have to read it because I know this verse very well. Machita Madgata Prana Bodhyantas Cha Parasparam Katyantas Jabam Nityam Tushanti Cha Ramanti Cha. By engaging in this process, in the association of devotees, of hearing about Krishna, Machita Madgata Prana Bodhyantas Cha Parasparam, exchanging with each other this Krishna Katha, then Katyantas Jabam Nityam, always doing this, then Tushanti Cha. Then we become satisfied. And not only satisfied, and when one's satisfied, that's Atmaram. You're taking pleasure in the self. In Krishna, because Krishna is in your heart, and actually, if you're Krishna conscious, you're in Krishna's heart too. Hridayam Mayham, Sadhanam Hridayam Mayham, Madanyata Nijanati, Naham Te Vyopanagapi. And then you're happy. Kevalananda Kanda, you're happy. You don't need to exploit someone. And then you can interact with people in a loving way. I mean, of course, you shouldn't do things like stealing girls' clothes. I mean, that's Krishna's prerogative. But you can, like Prabhupada. Prabhupada, that was the first thing, and I always mention this as the first thing I noticed when I came in touch with Prabhupada. He was someone who loved me, not for what I could do for him or what he could get from me, but he was someone who actually was concerned with my interests, and he had the absolute truth. And if we're like that, we can actually save the whole world. That's the key. That's the key. If one person like that, one pure devotee is like Prabhupada said, is like the sun or the moon, which gives the illumination for the whole